All right, let's get right into today's explainer. We are diving deep into the July 23, 2026 edition of the Wall Street Journal. And honestly, the front page today is absolutely staggering. We're looking at a world in massive transformation right now, from monumental shifts in global power dynamics to just mind-boggling sums of money flooding the tech sector. So let's break it all down.
Here's our roadmap for today. We'll kick things off with global flashpoints, then pivot over to the AI spending spree. From there, we'll take a hard look at IBM's historic stumble. And finally, we'll wrap up by analyzing the risks on the opinion pages. Let's go!
Section 1, Global Flashpoints. Today's front page presents this incredibly fascinating and frankly tense juxtaposition of landmark diplomacy right alongside rapidly escalating military action.
Okay, first up, a massive story out of the Middle East. The Trump administration has officially formalized a landmark civilian nuclear accord with Saudi Arabia. Now, strictly from a business perspective, this is a massive win for American infrastructure firms. It essentially gives U.S. companies the central starring role in developing Saudi Arabia's nuclear capabilities, all while firmly shutting the door on foreign competitors like Russia and China.
The actual specifics of this 30-year, multi-billion-dollar agreement are super interesting. At its core, the Saudis are buying Westinghouse AP1000 reactors. These are huge units capable of producing 1,100 megawatts of electricity each. But the real sticking point, the most debated provision by far, is the potential for uranium enrichment directly on Saudi soil. The agreement kicks off a 2-year joint study to see if indigenous enrichment is commercially viable. If it is, U.S. companies would build the facility under this highly secretive black box arrangement. The administration's argument here is that this structure gives the U.S. total influence and absolutely prevents the fuel from being diverted to a weapons program.
But there's a really stark contrast to this diplomatic breakthrough. Because literally right next door, the U.S. is concurrently surging military forces, combat medics, and heavy weaponry into the region due to the escalating conflict with Iran. Following deadly strikes by Tehran, including an attack in Jordan that tragically killed U.S. soldiers, the U.S. is ramping up preparations fast to give the president much more muscular military options. The Journal is reporting that over 150 combat medics just arrived at the Landstuhl Regional Medical Center in Germany in preparation for what might come next.
The human and economic toll of this 5-month conflict is just intensifying by the day. 18 U.S. troops have been killed, and the military has now deployed B-1 bombers, F-16s, and stealth F-35s to the region. Meanwhile, President Trump has explicitly threatened to destroy Iranian infrastructure. We're talking bridges, power plants, every single time Iran shoots at a ship in the Strait of Hormuz. And speaking of that waterway, it is basically paralyzed right now, which is halting a massive chunk of all global shipping. Add to that, U.S. forces are actively eyeing targets like Iran's Pickaxe Mountain, which is an underground nuclear enrichment site. The whole region is essentially a powder keg right now. Moving on to Section 2, the AI spending spree. Because while the geopolitical landscape is shifting, we are witnessing an absolute explosion of capital expenditure on Wall Street. Just take a second and look at this number, $750 billion, with a B. This is OpenAI's newly projected spending on computing power through the year 2030. They had previously projected a cool $600 billion and just casually revised it upward by another $150 billion. This mind-boggling figure really reflects the sheer, unprecedented scale of the AI infrastructure boom. These companies are in a dead sprint to lock up the computing capacity required to train and run their massive next-generation models. So you might be wondering, where is all this money actually going? Well, that brings us to Project Camellia. OpenAI is pouring $20 billion into a massive data center in Effingham County, Georgia. And get this, they are partnering directly with Georgia Power to secure 3.2 gigawatts of electricity just for this one site. To put that into perspective, that is an unbelievable amount of power. The crucial takeaway here is that OpenAI isn't just renting server space from cloud providers like Microsoft or Oracle anymore. They are stepping up to take direct, physical control of their infrastructure design from the ground up. And of course, competitors are definitely not sitting still. AMD and Anthropic just signed a massive pact of their own worth tens of billions of dollars. Anthropic is set to purchase up to 2 gigawatts of AMD's absolute latest generation Instinct MI450 chips, with production kicking off in early 2027. And to really cement this alliance, AMD is investing up to $5 billion directly into Anthropic. It's a hugely strategic move meant to ensure Anthropic gets the compute power it desperately needs, while seriously bolstering AMD's position against the reigning industry heavyweight, NVIDIA.
But here's the catch. This unprecedented spending spree is actually starting to make Wall Street a little nervous. When you look at Q2 AI capital expenditures, Alphabet spent an astonishing $44.9 billion in a single quarter, while Tesla spent $5.8 billion. Now, Alphabet actually posted 24% revenue growth this quarter, which is fantastic, right? But their stock still dropped. Why? Because that massive capex figure crossed what one portfolio manager called a $200 billion do not cross line. Investors are getting spooked as these heavy infrastructure investments push massive, highly profitable companies right into negative free cash flow territory. Elon Musk told investors it's just a massive capex year, but Wall Street is starting to ask the tough questions about when exactly these investments will yield actual returns.
Section 3, IBM's historic stumble. Because while billions are pouring into brand new AI infrastructure, we're seeing a really painful contrast play out in legacy technology.
It brings up a huge question. What actually happens when legacy tech falters in the age of AI? Where does the budget for all those shiny new AI chips and massive data centers come from? Well, according to the journal's reporting today, it comes directly from the budgets that used to be allocated to legacy tech.
And the financial fallout for IBM illustrates this perfectly. They just suffered their worst single-day stock loss in history. We're talking an unbelievable $67 billion in market value wiped out in one day. Their infrastructure revenue was down 7%, totally dragged down by a stunning 42% drop in sales of their data center mainframes. IBM CEO Arvind Krishna admitted they simply failed to close tens of deals. And the reason is clear. Enterprise clients abruptly slammed the brakes on their IT budgets, pivoted away from IBM mainframes, and shoved that money directly into the AI hardware we were just talking about. It's a brutal reality check.
Finally, Section 4, Analyzing the Risks. Let's head over to the opinion pages to unpack some of the long-term consequences of today's headlines.
Let's circle back to the critique of that Saudi nuclear deal. The journal's editorial board is raising some massive red flags about the U.S. potentially abandoning its long-held non-proliferation standards. Traditionally, the U.S. demands the gold standard, which strictly prohibits any domestic enrichment and plutonium reprocessing. But this new black box deal basically tosses that standard out the window, replacing it with a 2-year study that keeps the door wide open for Saudi enrichment. The editors argue this is a highly dangerous dodge by Washington, abandoning a tried-and-true safety method for preferential and very likely weaker monitoring.
And that leads directly to this pretty chilling quote highlighted in the opinions section from non-proliferation expert Henry Sokolsky. He says, "Whither goes Saudi Arabia, so goes the United Arab Emirates, Turkey, and Egypt. The idea that this will have a happy ending is delusional. The overarching fear here is that breaking the gold standard for the Saudis will immediately prompt other regional allies to demand the exact same capabilities, which could easily spark a localized nuclear arms race across one of the most volatile regions on Earth."
Shifting our focus domestically for a second, there's a fascinating letter to the editor today that really caught my eye. It's written by a GOP precinct chairman down in Harris County, Texas, and it completely challenges the prevailing political narratives we hear every day. He writes, "Voter apathy and accompanying low turnout is the #1 threat to our representative republic." It's a really striking perspective. Amidst all the loud partisan noise about fraud or existential threats to democracy, this boots-on-the-ground organizer is pointing out that the quiet, genuine danger is simply that regular citizens might just tune out and stop participating altogether.
And I think that leaves us with a great provocative thought to wrap up today's explainer. As literal trillions of dollars pour into artificial intelligence infrastructure, pushing legacy giants aside, and as global powers completely rewrite the rules of nuclear proliferation and military engagement, are we actually paying enough attention to the consequences? The pace of change on Wall Street and the global stage right now is just staggering. Thank you so much for joining me to unpack it all today. Keep paying attention, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.